Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to another episode of the Afghan Eye podcast. I'm your host Sangar Paykhar, and in this episode, my guest is Eldaniz Gusseinov, a distinguished expert in Eurasian affairs. In today's episode, Eldaniz and I will look back at the first Termez Dialogue in Uzbekistan. We attended this international conference in Uzbekistan's most southern region, bordering Afghanistan. And aside from this conference, there have been recent developments between Afghanistan and the Russian Federation. The Russian government has officially recognized the current government in Afghanistan, the first country in the world that has done that since the establishment of the emirate almost 4 years ago. So there's a lot to discuss, and our guest, Eldaniz Gusseinov, is an expert in the region. He is a foreign policy analyst and a research fellow at the Haydar Aliyev Center for Eurasian Studies at Ibn Khaldun University in Istanbul. Gusseinov specializes in EU foreign policy and Central Asian geopolitics. He's also the co-founder of Nightingale Intelligence International, a policy forecasting consultancy. He has published extensively on EU Central Asia relations and regional security for various platforms. He is also very active on LinkedIn. He writes amazing stuff in English. I always read what he has to say. So I'm very happy to have you here. So welcome to the show. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam, Sangar. Thank you so much for having me here, and it was a great pleasure to meet you during the Termez Dialogue in such a quite significant city, which really helps us to create new bridges between Central Asia, Afghanistan, and also having Afghanistan as a gateway to a broader region like South Asia, Gulf states, and I think even India, Eastern Africa, and
The whole world, the whole
world. Yeah.
Yes.
To be honest, like Afghanistan for Central Asia, not only for Central Asia, but in today's terms, also for Russian Federation, for Belarus, I think, in terms of North-South corridor, it's a gateway to the broad, the part of the world, like as I have already said. So if our governments in Central Asia argue in favor of deeper cooperation with Afghanistan, in such fields like transport, logistics, they always recognize that Afghanistan can really help to, for example, to enhance Kazakh export of grain, not only to Afghanistan, Iran, or Pakistan, but even to Eastern Africa, to Arabic Gulf states, and also to India, as I have already mentioned. So we do see really some Central Asian countries even recognize Afghanistan as a part of Central Asia. So during the Termez Dialogue, the main question which I raised, and also some of my colleagues, was how do we define South Asia, and if we can really put Afghanistan to this region, if really Afghanistan belongs to South Asia, or it's rather Central Asia, or it's in between. So, and for me, it wasn't clear enough. So if you remember during the Termez Dialogue, there was also a map of South Asia. And maybe from view of organizers of Termez Dialogue, South Asia consists of, I think it was only Pakistan, India, and Afghanistan, right? As I remember.
Bangladesh and Sri Lanka are also considered South Asia.
Yeah, but on the map which they were using during the forum, if I'm not wrong, correct me. Also, for me, it's questionable whether Iran is South Asia or Middle East. It's also, I think, a huge debate nowadays how we can also define Iran in this broader region.
That's a very good question. I think maybe briefly about Termez Dialogue. So it was hosted by the Uzbek government. Yeah. And Uzbekistan is trying to more or less play a leading role in the region by integrating Afghanistan into Central Asian economic interest. Would that be a correct description of the affairs over there?
It's not only about economic. I told you some governments, also in the case of Uzbekistan, there were some statements that the Uzbek government considers Afghanistan as a part of Central Asia. So it means we don't only approach in economic terms, but also in cultural, in political, And I think we will find even more platforms, I think more like, let's say, areas where we can also deepen our mutual ties. So it's not only about economics, really. If you speak about interconnectivity, in terms of, we also discussed during the Termez Dialogue, it was the main topic of the Termez Dialogue, it was interconnectivity. And interconnectivity is only a roof, but under it, you have so many topics where you can really engage with people of Afghanistan. So if we construct this all these connections, there's infrastructure for railways, for cargos. It also means a lot for exchange of people-to-people contacts. So I now see people from Afghanistan who come to Almaty, for example, who have their businesses, or even like people who belong to so-called diaspora. I don't like the word diaspora since in Kazakhstan, they have people of Kazakhstan, we are Kazakhstanis. And even Afghani obtains Kazakh passport. For me, he's in Kazakhstan. So he's a citizen of our country. That's why I oppose the word of diaspora. But regardless, we have these people here in Kazakhstan, and they do really contribute for our culture. Can give you some examples, like people wearing pakols, and you remember me during the Termez Dialogue. I had also my open pakol, which I bought at the Iroton Free Trade Zone. For me, it was also a kind of people-to-people exchange. So how I view Afghanistan and a pakol as a part of the culture of your daily life in Afghanistan, also scarves which you wear, for example, or all other different sides of Afghani culture. So for me, it was quite interesting and attractive to maybe somehow try to delve into it. I have, for example, here one repair service for phones and computers in Almaty, and it's owned by one Afghanistani. And as I talked to him, and he introduced me a lot about your culture, about languages you speak, for example, about ethnic diversity and all other topics. So as I told you, interconnectivity is just, sorry, I went a bit away from your question, but interconnectivity is more than just like economy. And yeah, during the times that we were speaking about economic ties, political, security, logistics. So I think it's a great initiative which we should definitely continue and contribute for its growing, to have this platform annually. Even like I think it's worth to have it maybe half yearly, if I'm correct in expressing it in English.
Yeah.
So maybe each half year gathering together and to discuss these topics, which brings us closer in this regard. Sorry, that I hope I could answer still your question.
No. You touched upon many interesting stuff here. I think to a large extent I agree that Afghanistan, from my perspective, is Central Asia, because culturally, linguistically, historically, we have a lot of connections with the Central Asian republics. For example, we have ethnic Kazakhs, ethnic Turkmens, ethnic Uzbeks in Afghanistan. And they have always been part of that region. It's not like they have migrated to Afghanistan recently or something like that. So the emergence of the modern nation states and how the regions are seen from different perspectives, it is a modern phenomenon. And something that I really appreciated about Termez Dialogue is that they put so much emphasis in history, because long before the emergence of the current nation states and the current borders and everything, our ancestors, they had ties with each other. There was trade and business and cultural exchange. I find it always very interesting when people are obsessed about genetics. And you have a lot of these people who send their DNA to these organizations to see what their ethnic composition is like. And I often laugh at the surprising reaction of a lot of people who do that. I haven't done that myself, but I hear from a lot of people from Afghanistan, from Turkey, from Pakistan, from Central Asian republics, that they say, oh my God, I'm 25% this and 13% that and this and that. And I keep saying, yes, we are now organized in current nation states as we are. However, our DNA, our cultural heritage, our language, our values, our customs, they go long back to areas, to times when basically these distinctions didn't exist. For example, I am half Tajik, half Pashtun, but wherever I go, my face, the way I look, people, they mistake me for a Turk. In Uzbekistan, some people were offended because I couldn't speak Uzbeki. They assumed I'm Uzbek. And they were like, what kind of person are you? Why don't you speak Uzbeki? I was like, I'm from Afghanistan and I know only a few words of Uzbeki. So I think this aspect of Termez Dialogue, the emphasis on common heritage, common interests, common values, and a common future, it was truly inspiring. And I also felt that it wasn't just, pandering. It came from a genuine place. You understand? Like, it wasn't just, okay, let's just throw around a few nice terms and try to be very, how do you say, like, use the language or terminology that makes people happy. But it came from a genuine place. And I also see, and maybe you can comment on this, would I be correct if I say that Central Asia, after the fall of Soviet Union, now 30 years later, we see very well-developed and confident nation states that look far beyond what has transpired in the last century, and they see a future for the region that is much more ambitious than what is often perceived outside the region?
I would agree with you, but we have one, I think, quite important point that I really oppose idea of nation state because I mean, how it came to Central Asia, namely from European Union, I mean, not European Union, sorry, Europe creating this concept of nation state, then comes the Soviet Union, and we have this transition from European Union through the Soviet Union to Central Asian countries. So like how we were constructing our nations, also constitutions which were arguing that, for example, some particular ethnic is how to say it, state creating like a state constructing ethnic group, the main like kind of main ethnic group in the country. But it's not actually typical for Central Asia. Also for Afghanistan, like it was, I think, in Central Asia, it didn't really make sense which ethnic group you belong, but I think mostly religion which you belong to. It didn't really make sense what language you speak, but mostly, I mean, as I said, maybe your heritage or kind of your religion. So in the case of, I think, Central Asia and Afghanistan, we have a huge diversity of languages, of ethnic groups. And I think what we should really put more emphasis on it. I don't know, I have to be honest right now, no idea how Afghanistan tries to build its own state. Is it a nation state or is it a kind of another idea since you don't have this kind of influences which were from Soviet Union in the case of Central Asia, but maybe you have some other experiences and influence which you could also maybe a kind of exchange. And we would also really like in Central Asia research how will you build your own I would not say nation state, but at least your own state, and how would you be perceived from external, like let's say powers or observers. That's the first point. Beyond the main program of Termez Dialogue, we had also cultural program, as you remember. So we went to this museum, archaeological museum of Termez. And I was really surprised how many facts I could really be informed about. So about Alexander the Great, and also about this all connections between Termez and Afghan cities. I mean, current, let's say, Afghan cities, Mazar-i Sharif, Herat, and all this, trade ties. I think we forgot about it really. So over the time, I really appreciated this program. I mean, just to go to this archaeological museum, it was really worth the whole trip to Termez, to be honest. Just to have an opportunity to go to this museum and to discover all these issues which really brings us all together in the case of Central Asia and Afghanistan in South Asia. And third, what I would say, it was really interesting what you also emphasized about your how people try to recognize you as Afghani or like I mean there is a Tajik, Pashto, Uzbek. It was the same in my case. I think that the reason is as I was Termez Dialogue, I had my beard, as you remember, I wore my pakol, and people were recognizing me as an Afghani. And you remember we also tried like made a kind of experiment trying to cross this checkpoint from Aratom to the city, and I was wearing this pakol and had the scarf. And we were just trying to figure out how people would recognize me as an Afghani or as like a kind of person from Central Asia. I think the border guard, they were really recognizing me as an Afghanistan from the reaction to that thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So first, it happened during, I remember I attended one forum somewhere in China. It was 2023, if I'm not wrong. And there was also delegation from Afghanistan, from the Ministry of Culture, if I'm not wrong, Culture of Information, if it's this is how you name it in your country. And I entered an elevator, and there were two Afghanistanis, like Afghans, who also entered it. And they were referring to me in Pashto, saying Assalamu alaikum and then continuing the speech. And I was a bit confused, said, "Oh, sorry, I can understand you." And they said, "Oh, I heard you are from Afghanistan." I said, "No, sorry." And they thought that I'm from Kandahar. After that, I told the story to my father and said, "Do you know there's a lot of Kızılbaş residing in Kandahar, and I
Yes.
have Azerbaijani roots, Caucasian,
Okay.
actually, to be honest, Caucasian, South
Okay.
Caucasian roots, yes, from my like family." So and my father said he was maybe, I mean, this was his assumption of my father, that he was thinking that you Kızılbaş, maybe from Kandahar. That was my father's idea. So yeah,
Yeah,
we have.
like there are Qizilbash in Kandahar in the city center. There is a place in city center of Kandahar. It's called
Okay.
Topkhana, means
Oh,
the arsenal or where the cannons are, because the king of Afghanistan, the founder of the current nation state of Afghanistan, his guard were Qizilbash. He was being his personal security were Qizilbash, and the Qizilbash in Afghanistan were like a martial community. They were in the military, very high-ranking military figures of the royal family in Afghanistan, and this is why there are still Qizilbash in Kandahar, but also in Kabul and other regions. And regarding people of Caucasus region, there are also other people who are originally from the Caucasus region, but that's a long story. I think what you said about the nation state and the current state of Afghanistan, you see the Taliban, they have an emirate which is primarily based on their understanding of how a Islamic government should be organized. However, the concept of a nation state is still very underdeveloped and problematic in Afghanistan because nation states have been homogenized. So you have like for example, here in France, before the Napoleonic era, there were multiple languages in France. In Germany, there were multiple ethnic groups and languages, but once there was a process of homogenization, they became all Germans or all French and all Dutch, and they all speak one formal language. In Afghanistan, we don't have one formal language, we have two. We have Farsi and Pashto. So there is already one issue. Then you have at least 15 other languages in Afghanistan that are spoken. The national television and radio in Afghanistan broadcasts these shows in Pashto, in Farsi, in Baloch, Uzbeki, and I think they have a few other small local branches of the national radio and television that have in local languages. So the country is not entirely homogenized. Due to the last 4 decades of war, ethnic differences and ethnic groups have been also, at conflict with each other. So it's a sensitive issue. However, I do agree with your perspective on matters. Like, the nation state doesn't really work in our region. We are not homogenized, and we also don't have to see people from a different ethnic group necessarily as mutually exclusive from our own, because due to common religion and history and language, and not always language, but culture and interaction and everything. We have too much in common with people from other ethnic groups, and this is why a nation state based on one ethnicity, it doesn't really work in my opinion. I would say personally, I prefer a situation where ethnicity is less emphasized, but common values, common beliefs, and common heritage is more emphasized to preserve unity. And I think this is also relevant to the region, like Central Asia, Afghanistan. If we emphasize common values, common interests, common history, common heritage, then there is a lot that we can accomplish by bringing people together and benefiting from each other. At the current state of affairs, like due to war and poverty and everything, it is often seen as, okay, Afghanistan always needs help. Afghanistan is aid dependent, is underdeveloped. All these matters are true, but at the same time, we could also say that the engagement that we see from Central Asian republics, Kazakhstan, maybe you can delve into that a little bit more later with the trans-Afghan railways and everything. But I see that it's not so much as, okay, we're going to donate money or whatever to Afghanistan because they are our poor neighbors, but it's more like, okay, we need economic development and progress, and this is a logical step, but it's not handout or charity. It's more an investment that benefits all. And this is something that I, like during the Termez Dialogue, this was a very interesting aspect of the whole process, in my opinion, that people weren't just there talking about, oh, so sad Afghans, oh, poor people. Because here in Europe, especially in Western conferences and Western events organized on Afghanistan, it's always that dynamic of, okay, we have to help these poor people. But in Central Asia, it was more like, okay, we need progress. It's beneficial for all of us, so let's do something. And it's not just a handout, but more of, okay, an investment that will benefit all of us. Would you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, I can even give you some examples. So in Central Asia, we have less perceptions that Afghanistan, I mean, it's just a poor country, since Afghanistan does have resources, for example, to construct Koshtepa. And it requires a huge amount of power, I mean, people power, manpower, and also money, I mean, financial resources which you can allocate for the construction of this kind of channel. So since we do discuss it a lot in Central Asia, it has a huge effect and impact on our own water security. We do understand that, I mean, Taliban has resources which can help it to push all this kind of projects. It's not only about Koshtepa, but it's also about domestic construction of infrastructure for cargos, for vehicles, also by having all these different projects for dams, I mean, for rivers which cross also Afghanistan, transborder rivers between Afghanistan and Pakistan. And we do observe all these projects and we do understand, okay, but they do have resources. But the thing is that we don't just want to donate money. We want to give an opportunity to earn money. This is how our companies want to interact with the Afghanistani companies also. So look, we have beverages from Afghanistan, which people sell in Kazakhstan. Even in my hometown in Aktau, the city of the Caspian Sea, somehow you get there, like it's a far away from Afghanistan. To be honest, I have no idea how cargos get to the city, because for us, for a long time, it was a kind of endpoint. Now, because of the middle corridor, of course not, but I understand that these cargos don't cross Aktau to reach Baku and to go to Europe. So I think Aktau is also an endpoint for them. But I mean, regardless, somehow they managed to get there. They managed to go to different parts of Kazakhstan. People also, for example, in this we have karak tea became quite popular in Kazakhstan. I don't know if you drink karak in Afghanistan.
Yes, karak tea is tea with milk, and it is very popular in India and Pakistan. But in Afghanistan, we also drink tea with milk. It's not called karak. We call it shir chai, milk tea milk. And I think the popularity of karak in Central Asia may have come through Afghanistan, but it's more a South Asian influence on Central Asia.
So the reason why I mentioned karak was not about that it's an Afghanistan influence on our countries, but the thing is that if you go to any karak tea station, let's say, in across the region, you will also find Afghan cola or Afghan Pepsi. Really, like I mean, Pepsi branded buns. I mean, of Pepsi Cola. If you turn it, I mean, you will find where it was produced, and it was in Afghanistan. So we do import Pepsi. I mean, for some reasons, because people perceive it as a halal Pepsi. So people import this Pepsi from Afghanistan, not from other stations like Turkey or from anywhere else, but namely from Afghanistan, because people consider it as a halal Pepsi. So you see here some cultural exchanges, which also comes together with business exchanges, with infrastructure, and so on. But as we have already said, we should emphasize our diversity. I mean, our values. I mean, we have so many ethnic groups residing across whole Central Asia and Afghanistan. So we should always, I mean, preserve rights and terms of people, like having this, how to say it, same or level of rules, I mean, for any group of people, and not to discriminate people because of their language or just because of their ethnic background. So from my point of view, that's the reason why I also mentioned this European heritage of a nation state building. So the thing is that in Central Asia, we have a huge culture of diversity, of multiculti, as I would say, multiculturality across the whole region. Just to mention Bukhara, Samarkand, I mean, these Asian cities, also like Mazar-e Sharif, Herat, Kandahar in Afghanistan. Some people from Central Asia, some, how to say it, like leaders of thought, they were coming to Afghanistan, to Balkh, to study, and then to return to Central Asia and to bring the knowledge to people. So I think we just need really to emphasize this, all this, what we have, this the whole heritage background, the huge, rich background. And we need to speak about, as I said, about ethnic diversity, about linguistic diversity, about common heritage, common history, emphasize just to, which would definitely benefit for both, I mean, for Central Asia and for Afghanistan. I mean, it's not only about Kazakhstan or Uzbekistan, it's also about Turkmenistan, it's about Kyrgyzstan, it's about also Tajikistan. Let's not forget about this border trade points where Afghans can also come to bring their goods, which they produce somehow, I mean, themselves, maybe by handmade or maybe also using some, I don't know, maybe facilities to produce these products, to bring it to Tajikistan to sell or to buy some stuff which will be, I mean, produced in Tajikistan and sold on the Tajik side. So we have all these issues which we need to recognize. So, as I said, in Central Asia, we recognize, I mean, what people in Afghanistan suffered. We understand that the time to support the people in Afghanistan, to bring these goods, to bring these business opportunities, to invite your entrepreneurs to our country, to our regions, to also to sell some stuff, dried fruits, beverages, maybe some metals, to make money, to bring more investments in your countries, in Afghanistan. So we have Mazar-e Sharif, Termez, which has already been constructed. That actually that's also awesome. I mean, imagine we could manage to construct this railway link, which now helps to bring this all goods from Central Asia. Also, Kazakh grain or flour comes from Kazakhstan by using this railway connection to Mazar-e Sharif via Hayraton. We also, maybe Kazakhstan will construct another part of a railway which will connect Turkmenistan with Herat. So a huge number of projects which we try to implement. Also, let's not forget about electricity export from Central Asia, from Tajikistan, from Kyrgyzstan, from Turkmenistan, from Turkmen side, which we also try to export our electricity to your country. I mean, to support people of Afghanistan, to make you sure that you have light at home to make a podcast or to listen to podcasts which we are producing right now.
I'm actually in the Netherlands, and here we do have electricity. Yes, but everything you say, you know, obviously from an Afghan perspective, I would agree with everything you say. And I also think that this type of engagement based on mutual interests is the way forward, especially for our region, due to all the factors that you've mentioned. But then there are also some concerns, like, for example, with regards to water management, there are concerns because if Afghanistan starts to build more dams and canals, less water will flow into Central Asia, and that is by some people perceived as a cause for a conflict in the region. But at the same time, the way Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan and these countries are currently engaging with Afghanistan, it doesn't seem like they are worried that this will be a reason for conflict. Yet some commentators, some analysts, they have this doomsday scenario that this will eventually lead into some kind of break between Central Asia and Afghanistan. Obviously, from an Afghan perspective, like if I look at the policy of the current government regarding water management, basically what they keep saying is that we do not want to limit the access of water to our neighbors. We just want to use our share. But if there is a decline in the quantity of water due to climate change, it means that the neighboring countries will also receive less water. So who knows, maybe this will lead to any kind of difficulty in future. How would you assess this issue?
I mean, the thing is that we need to recognize from a point of international law that Afghanistan is not a member of any treaties with Central Asians on water management. So we need to work on how we can, facilitate your membership in any kind of treaties with Central Asian countries to make it more proper, this water management between all the countries. But other than that, you see that water can also be weaponized. In the case of Indo-Pakistan tensions and suspension of Indus treatment, I don't know if they restarted any kind of negotiations. If I'm not wrong, no. There's no restart of, and it has a huge impact actually on your relations with Pakistan and Afghani-Pakistan relations, because you have, if I'm not wrong, 9 transborder rivers like Kabul and Kunar, which also, go
Yes.
through.
So some rivers flow out of Pakistan into Afghanistan, and then there are rivers that flow out of Afghanistan into Pakistan, which also reveals the futility of these so-called borders between nation states that they don't make any sense. But yeah, that's the situation between Afghanistan and Pakistan, and there is a lot of water flowing out of Afghanistan into Iran.
Yeah.
So the flow of water out of Afghanistan to Pakistan is reason for possible tensions. Flow of water from Afghanistan to Iran. There is a treaty between Iran and Afghanistan, but the Iranians are saying the quality of water is going down because you're building a dam. But at the same time, yes, the quality or the quantity of water is going down, not just because of the dam, it's due to climate change. So if there is less water, then obviously less water will flow into neighboring countries. But as you said, we do need agreements, we do need cooperation on this matter. And current situation, since you're an observer of geopolitics in Central Asia, have you picked up anything that you would say, okay, this can be a reason for any kind of disagreement in future, or you think, okay, it will all be worked out through dialogue? What's your assessment?
Scenarios people try to build about conflict arising from water, we should also not underestimate these people, their assessments. Since we did have also some managed border disputes in the case of Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan in our region. And I need to emphasize in that sense that we have a huge chain of conflicts, which namely arise from suspension of Indus treatment. Just a few. Imagine. Now, India doesn't share any kind of information about water flow to Pakistan. They can also construct a dam on this river. Technically, they can't really, make it that Pakistan doesn't receive water from Indus. Technically, it's impossible right now. But the thing is that this creates a spillover effect on Afghanistan, Pakistan, then it means that Afghanistan, in a case of tensions, can also increase consumption of Amur Darya. And it means that Uzbekistan then can also increase consumption of Sirdarya, which goes to Kazakhstan. And this tension over there also led to a new agreement between Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan about Sirdarya water management, by the way, and how they measure volumes of water consumed between two countries. So first, we have experiences of negotiations in Central Asia about water. We have it in the case of Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan. Even like I was observing some negotiations during the Termez Dialogue between diplomats about water management between Central Asian countries. But second, it doesn't mean that we can really avoid any kind of tensions in this regard because water, we have a growing population in Central Asia, I think also in Afghanistan. Mainly we have young people, we have relatively high birth rates in the region. It means that demand and water will grow, but water becomes more weaponized in all our neighbors. Just in the case of Kazakhstan, I think only approximately, if I'm not wrong, 60% of Kazakh water sources they come from external countries. I mean, from China, from Russia, from Uzbekistan. We have some conflict, not conflicts, but let's say we take care of rivers which come from China because population of Xinjiang in comparison to other regions of China is growing. It means that consumption of rivers which go to Kazakhstan like Irtysh from China, I mean, volumes of water we receive is also declining and it has an impact on some lakes in Kazakhstan. As just an example for you. So in this case, it's a case of worries, but we do also try to have a smart policy towards Afghanistan. Like, but why do we promote also these projects? So Kushtepa channel, it's the first sign of this interconnectivity, how we are interconnected. Since Taliban started construction of Kushtepa, it had, I mean, dramatic and also sudden effect on Central Asia. I mean, at the same time, could you imagine just you started constructing it, and we were observing first outcomes of the construction of first meters you were constructing of Amur Darya. For us, it was obvious that you were something constructing, you were constructing there something. Since I was receiving first notifications about it in 2022, in earlier month of 2022, about your construction of, I mean, not your, but Taliban's, let's say, construction of Koshtepa. And why do we also promote this project? Because we create ties. We create this interconnectivity, which will make for you also sure that you need to negotiate with Central Asian countries because we are so interconnected. Since you, for example, if we will receive less water from Amur Darya, it will have a huge impact on our economic situation. If our GDP will decrease, it means also that we will less cooperate with you economically, with Afghanistan. It will also have an impact on our investment projects since we will have less money to allocate it abroad because we will need to tackle all these issues which will arise from, I mean, water shortages in our region. So in that sense, I think also that Taliban also understands that, okay, if we will use more water from Amur Darya, it will also have a huge economic impact on Central Asia. And in return, it will have a huge impact on our economic cooperation with Central Asia, which is right now so important for Afghanistan to improve your economic situation. So yeah, I mean, that is the strategy of Central Asia, to create more points of cooperation, to enable this interconnectivity and to make you understand that if this canal will affect our economy, it will also in reverse affect Afghanistan economic situation in that sense. I mean, in particular in cooperation with Central Asia.
You know, it makes perfect sense. Like in any kind of business agreement, the benefits need to be mutual. So if Afghanistan and Central Asia, through the railways that they're building, the roads, the pipelines and everything, if they both want to benefit, then it also implies that water management needs to be also taken care of. It is a matter that concerns all of us. Like, for example, right now there is news that Kabul city is running out of water because there are like 6 million people, more than 6 million people living in a city that was originally, the grid system in the city was originally developed for a total capacity of 700,000 people.
Yeah.
So the water in Kabul is already running out because there are too many people using water, and the system is not well developed. It's not developed at all. And for the past 4 decades, a lot of people have been just randomly building wells and disrupting the groundwater levels in different areas. And those groundwater reservoirs have not been able to, recover. So this is an issue that is currently about to cause a major crisis in Afghanistan, in Kabul. So in Afghanistan, water management is an issue that people actually feel at the moment. Obviously, I think the urgency of the matter is something that needs to be addressed, and a venue like Termez, a place where everyone can get together and have these dialogues, I think this is a perfect opportunity to do that there. So this is also maybe to round up our discussion on Termez. You see any benefit in doing this every year?
Of course, I mean, I see more benefit in institutionalizing this format of cooperation. So we need to have some working groups between Central Asia and Afghanistan on water issues. So we do recognize your right to consume water which comes from your country. I mean, you have this upper river states, you have down river states. So here we do recognize in some countries of Central Asia do recognize Afghanistan has its right to consume to use water which takes its start from your territory, right? Since we don't have any legal framework, or if you have it, it's a few maybe. If I'm wrong, there's no legal framework there's no legal framework even like between Soviet Union and Afghanistan, which will create framework of water usage. So the thing is that we do recognize and we do understand that any kind of destabilization or any kind of situation worsening, yes, people getting poverty rates increase, will definitely have a huge direct impact in Central Asia. So that's the thing that we don't understand, that you need water. We send our delegations from Central Asia to negotiate, to cooperate, to think of it. So yeah, I think in Termez Dialogue, we should think of working groups, which will definitely help us to have a unified approach towards some high-level topics. The first one is, of course, water. So to have a working group on water, to think how we can help people from Afghanistan to don't have this kind of, as you have a crisis in Kabul right now. Second, how can we promote transport interconnectivity? And the third topic, I think, is also about having consultations on some threats like terrorism, for example, exchange of information about this kind of threats and how it can also have an application on the region. As I understand, I told you also about the connectivity, but you know the stories of people died on the border between Tajikistan and Afghanistan and mining fields. It was, I think, Chinese companies which was processing gold on the territory of Tajikistan. So you see this interconnectivity. These issues have an impact on our attractiveness for foreign investors, and we are interested in Chinese investments. I think Afghanistan is also interested in receiving these Chinese investments for some strategic projects which you have. China also expressed an interest in joining construction, not joining, but it's expressed some kind of interest in Trans-Afghan Railway. It's not into joining or constructing, but still they have also interest in it. And I explained you why, because it will help them to bring Central Asia, Afghanistan to CPEC to join. They will construct this as kind of a ring, which I also explained in one of my publications. So this ring will start with Kashgar and end with Kashgar, or like crossing the territory of Central Asia, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. So in Termez Dialogue, I think we should also have external powers like Iran, Pakistan, India, Russia, China, to express their position towards all these projects. But I think working groups should consist of people from the region, Central Asia, Afghanistan, which would work on the specific topics. But right now, I think still we're doing a bit well. I mean, since there was no discussion about Torgundi Gerat at all, I think even before, I mean, Taliban came. And there was some talks about Trans-Afghan Railway, which would connect Termez with Kabul and Peshawar. There were no talks at all about constructing Turgundi Gerat and then from Gerat to Kandahar and then Zaranj, I mean, to go to half to Iran or to go to Karachi, to Pakistani ports. So you see this now in the product of it. So there was a foreign minister of Kazakhstan who went to Afghanistan recently. It was, I think, 2 days ago. They were also discussing construction of this railway. We see interest from Russian Federation. We see interest from Iran. We see interest even from some smaller states like Azerbaijan to join different projects which will enable this interconnectivity in whole Eurasia. So yeah, let's have Termez Dialogue annually. Let's have this conversation. And I think it should be maybe it should be less formal. So I like the way how they organize, but we should maybe think of more informal, like opportunities to talk, formats like before the Termez Dialogue, I mean the official part of it, there was a part where we were discussing a new project. I mean, this is a kind of test project which was launched by Center for Progressive Reforms from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, and Peace Nexus to facilitate better connections between Central Asia and Afghanistan. So we have also two participants from Afghanistan. We have a group of people of Central Asia and Afghanistan together with us. And I think this is a unique project because now this guy who works with us together in our group, he brings his own view and insights, his Afghanistan perspective, so that we could always preserve the main idea of our project, not to insist any harm. So we do want to avoid any harm which we can insist to your country by inviting people from your country to join our project and to discuss with us together how we see the situation in your country, how he could actually help us to improve our perspective in our projects in Afghanistan.
Yes, I agree. And when I was in Tashkent, I had the opportunity to speak to the organizers from the Center for Strategic Studies under the president of Uzbekistan. I also spoke to someone from the Center for Progressive Reforms in Uzbekistan. And in both conversations, my question was, are we going to do this every year? And the answer wasn't very clear, but to me, it makes more sense because, as you said, you need to have a continuous dialogue where all these matters, whether it's security, terrorism, water management, climate change, trade, commerce, legal frameworks that facilitate all of that, energy, exchange of knowledge and expertise in certain fields. Like, for example, in Afghanistan, we don't have that many engineers and experts who have experience in developing a lot of stuff. All these matters, they require continuous dialogue. And let's just say that this initiative was just a first event, right?
Yes.
In my opinion, it was a very successful first initiative, and I see a lot of potential in it. So I hope that they take our feedback and all stakeholders in the region see the benefit of this platform and that it becomes a regular annual event. Another issue that I would like to get input from you on is we are all cozy and friendly here in Central Asia, but at the same time, we see conflict in India and Pakistan, tensions over there. And then there are also tensions between Pakistan and Afghanistan. On the other hand, you see Iran is deporting almost 500,000 people just within a matter of a few weeks. So this is also reason for some tensions. And then there was this recent conflagration between Israel, United States, and Iran. While Central Asia is building a relationship with Afghanistan, Afghanistan is connected to South Asia and Middle East. And if there's conflict in Middle East or in South Asia, this will definitely have a very negative impact on the future that we have in mind, right? So what is your assessment on the impact of these conflicts in South Asia and the tensions between Iran and Israel and the United States on the general agenda that is currently being formulated by like Central Asia and Afghanistan? Do you think that this is going to disrupt everything, or are there ways to mitigate it?
It's more about diversify or die. This is how I would describe whole situation. We do observe first outputs of impact of interconnectivity between Central Asia and Afghanistan, and I would say broader between Central Asia and South Asia after the collapse of this conflict between Iran and Israel, and also between Pakistan and India. So I think what we should do is to have a more cautious approach. So that's the reason why I speak more in favor of constructing a railway link through Herat to Kandahar, since it enables us to reorient. So once there's a mutual strike between Iran and Israel, we can go to Pakistani ports. If there's a new strike between Pakistan and India, we can go then to Iranian ports. It's not only about strikes between India and Pakistan, but it's also about strikes between Afghanistan and Pakistan, which also creates some obstacles for cargoes with goods from Central Asia to reach ports of Pakistan, by the way, on your border points. So in that sense, I think we should definitely work on how we can be more flexible. And from my point of view, of course, we will be most flexible approach is to construct both railway links. I mean, you and people of Afghanistan will definitely glad of it, but we do also understand that we don't have much resources. So that I think we should maybe try to put more investments to Herat Kandahar construction, since you have also this, I think, 87% completed link from Tehran or from Zaranj, if I'm wrong, to Iran, which also connects you with Iranian ports to go to export your goods to India. So yeah, from my point of view, we should really emphasize and put more focus on this part of link in your country. But yeah, but on the other side, Termez, Kabul, Mazar Sharif, Kabul, Peshawar also makes sense for me. So it's a good one since it's also shortest one for Uzbekistan. And also we have right now existing connection, which also helps Kazakhstan and Russia to export goods to Afghanistan. So now we have a huge debate where how we should actually go with that. Do you know there are some feasible studies which are being conducted as a thought in media between Russian and Uzbek companies making these feasible studies of both projects, by the way, of Mazar-e Sharif, Kabul, Peshawar, and another one which goes Herat, Kandahar, Spin Boldak. And there's another city, how it's called in Pakistan. I forgot this bordering city. And it's Spin Boldak, and there's another point.
Quetta.
Okay. Quetta. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Also a big city. So from Quetta to go to Karachi to anywhere. Also, it's about that since Turkmenistan has already started construction, even like it was 2 years ago. I know there was some first, not 2 years, 1 year ago, there were Turkmen constructors in your country who were making some preparation work for the construction of a pipe. And now they also want to work on electricity supplement, I mean, the supplementation promotion, I mean, not promotion, but yes, okay, let's say supplementations like of electricity for Turkmenistan, which will help to bring all the stuff which will make this construction of a pipe, which will go from Turkmenistan to well, provision. Yes, I want to say provision of electricity to your border regions with Turkmenistan to construct this pipe. But the problem is that the idea was, I mean, main inspiration, let's say, main idea of Turkmens was to supply gas to India as a main consumer. And also Russians, I think about Russians will also support TAPI. And clear enough that Russia will use Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, and this existing Soviet infrastructure to export Russian gas to Pakistan, to Afghanistan, and also to India. But now all these tensions they do have a huge impact on the implementation of projects. And also it's more about I can even tell you that Iran-Israel strikes and absence of any kind of red line. So we never know when can again occurs, and no guarantees that Israel can start again any kind of strikes against Iran. Same about US. We never know if US can start again, attacking Iranian facilities, and if there any conflict which can escalate. So we never know if it can escalate or not. And that's the reason I think why this conflict between Azerbaijan and Russia also happened. And now Russia will reorient its cargo traffic to go to this, that how we say, we call it warm seas, yes, like to Indian Ocean, to go to Indian Ocean, not through Azerbaijan and Iran, but actually through Central Asia and also then to Afghanistan, with an opportunity to go to Iran or to Pakistan. So you see now, right now, a huge impact of all these things happening. And I don't speak about also, I keep silence about how you actually, Afghanistan benefited from the strikes partly between Iran and Israel, since there were some airplanes which were going as a transit airplanes through your territory. And I read some reports, I don't know if I think it's correct, that Afghanistan was earning approximately $700 from each airplane transiting your country. So yeah, that's I think some good observation how all the things impact our region and also Afghanistan. So on Termez Dialogue, we need to have a coordination. How we can tackle these issues, how we can have a smart approach. What if, for example, having scenarios, clear scenarios, and how we will mitigate these risks. For example, Pakistan, India strikes, then we go to Iran. Iran, Israel strikes, then we go to Pakistan. What kind of goods we will, try to bring in the case of this or another scenario? What happens if Afghanistan and Pakistan can again start mutual strikes? Or Iran, Afghanistan, by the way, also. And that's the reason why I also propose to have Termez Dialogue under auspices and the framework of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, since you have a institutional base, you have also financial base, you have also all these actors within this organization which will attend this forum and bring these ideas how to create this so-called Shanghai spirit in this broader Eurasian region.
So the Russian Federation has decided to recognize the Taliban government in Afghanistan. You briefly mentioned the fact that tensions between Azerbaijan and Russia are basically forcing Russia to redirect towards Central Asia and Afghanistan and etc. But maybe there are also other reasons and explanations. Could you explain why Russia, out of all other countries, has decided to recognize this government now? That's the first part of my question. And the second part is, how does that impact the Central Asian region?
So let me start with your second question. It has a huge impact on Central Asia. It will cement Russian presence in the region. It will just make Russia more sure that it's now one of the main actor in our region. So your country, Afghanistan, makes Russia having this kind of cutting edge effect. So for Russia, its not main aim is not to be influential in Central Asia. Aim is to become more influential in Afghanistan and show your country in South Asia. And in that sense, Central Asia and cementation of Russian influence serves as a pivotal, spill over, as a ripple effect. So Russian idea, we go to Afghanistan, we construct, we explore this huge market of 40 million of people. Sorry, it's a huge market, which also has its own demands for wheat, for flour, for rice, for construction materials, by the way, for maybe also for military vehicles, for exchange of information on terrorism traffic, on drug traffic, on anything else. For Russia, it's a huge opportunity to raise its own importance in global affairs. If a country has a link to Afghanistan, has a link to this information which Afghanistan can share about all these things, if a country has a link and input to your resources, if a country has a control over main arteria infrastructure, logistics arteria of Eurasia through your country, it means that the country can really become influential in the whole region, in whole Eurasia, or even in global affairs. So I think in Afghanistan, people do also understand that Afghanistan can really become a kind of a new heartland of logistics of Eurasia, and Russia can really win from it, benefit if it will really manage to implement all these projects. It's a big question if they will be able to do that. But all the steps they take towards your countries, that you toward your country, I think for me, it explains from this prism that it's a cutting edge approach. Second, it's the strategic importance of your country in terms of energy, resources, logistics, exchange of information, and what will really raise, the importance of Russia. Since if you have good connections with Afghanistan, you have all these things on your board. It means that other countries will try to consult with you on these matters. Will like also Central Asian countries or even China or European countries, which will also have interest in your country in Afghanistan. It's also about having more footprint in the conflicts which arise between Pakistan and India. If Russia will manage to grow its presence in South Asia, same about Iran is Israel. So since there's no Syria, at least no Russian president, not Russian, let's say there's no Bashar Assad. Since there's no Assad in Syria, it would actually, that's the reason why Israel managed to make strikes. Otherwise, air defense systems of Syria would actually fight against these rockets or against these jets crossing its air space. And since there's no Bashar Assad, there's no air defense system of Syria, which was damaged by Israel forces during this stand cop in Syria. Russia can't really somehow influence Israel-Iran relations. And Afghanistan is also an opportunity for them because since you have a better connection, you have a better presence in South Asia, also Afghanistan, which borders Iran, China, Pakistan, Central Asia. And in the case we will manage to implement all this project, if Russia will create this roof to somehow control it or to at least to have any kind of opportunity to assert its power over all these points, all these connections, it will definitely raise its importance in world the affairs and global affairs. So this is how I would explain why Russia is doing it right now. So I'm quite skeptic about two things. So I was quite skeptic about Russia's Afghanistan rapprochement during this attacks in Moscow. If you remember, it was approximately 1 year ago, right? And it was April or May, if I'm not wrong, last year.
Last year at the theater. The movie theater. At the theater in Moscow where...
At Mall.
Yes.
It was not in Moscow, it was in the surrounding of Moscow. So, as they were arguing that, how it's called, Igor Khorasan was guilty for organizing this attack. And people argue that Khorasan, is based in Afghanistan. This is how people... I'm not a specialist on terrorism issues, so I can argue here 100%. But some people argue about Khorasan and Afghanistan. So I was quite skeptical after that Russia would take any steps towards Afghanistan. But yeah, I was not wrong. I was not correct. Russia took steps towards your country. And I think that it's because of first that the war in Ukraine will last definitely maybe 2 years or even more. And even Trump's victory in elections didn't really impact somehow Russia's success on the battlefield. So it explains that this connections between Russia and Europe, maybe it will restart in 3 years, in 4 years. So Russia looks for any new markets to enter. So Afghanistan is one of those markets. Second, it's also an opportunity to raise your own presence in world affairs. And third, also throws the links between Europe and China, which will grow against the backdrop of tariffs against tariffs which US imposed against China. China has already even will increase volumes of cargo which go to Europe through Central Asia, not via sea, but via through territory of Central Asian countries. So this connectivity between China and Europe will more rely on Central Asia, on Middle Corridor, It means that China will also look for any kind of security guarantees for its investment in Central Asia. And now we do observe it also that China wants to increase its security presence in the region. You can even see it from Xi Jinping's recent speech during Central Asia-China summit, or even like in agreements which was signed by Central Asian countries and China on good neighborhood. You will also see that there's a clear focus on security from Chinese side. For Russia, it means that China can somehow question Russian sphere of influence in the region, and to tackle it, to let's say even combat this growing China's surplusing, removing Russia from the region or decreasing Russia's presence in the region, it means you need to find a better way how you can definitely, like just to cement your presence in the region. So it was Afghanistan and this cutting edge approach, which helps Russia to increase its presence in the region. So I hope I could answer your question.
Thank you very much. I think, both issues that we've covered so far, Termez Dialogue and the recognition of the Islamic Emirate by the Russian Federation, matters that are still evolving. So I think for our audience, this conversation may have been refreshing because it's a little bit different than most of our episodes, because our episodes were more focused on internal matters in Afghanistan, maybe matters related to Pakistan, Western relations with Afghanistan, but now this emphasis on Central Asia, Russia, and generally the wider region is something that we need to explore more. So I was wondering, would you be interested to be my guest again in near future, so that we can pick some of the topics that we have discussed today and then just zoom in one of these issues more deeply? Because for you it may seem like, okay, this is everything that I have to cover, but I think that especially in the English language, most of the things that you're discussing are actually not very well known. So I would like to have you as my guest in the near future as well. So I'm looking forward to that. Would you be interested?
Of course, Afghanistan is one of priorities for our foreign policy in Central Asia. It's a priority for, as you see, from many actors in Eurasia. Afghanistan, I think there will be a few countries which will be attracting more attention, and among them is definitely Afghanistan. So I think your country will attract even more and more attention in terms of implementation of all these projects which we have already discussed. We haven't even discussed the project of CASA, for instance, which also definitely deserves more attention. Also, TAPI, we could go more deeply inside it. So I think Eurasia, it's a region where you have one situation, one scenario, let's say one event taking place, which impact another part of the region. So like how this tension between Pakistan and India impact Russia, for example, how tensions between Israel and Iran impact Afghanistan. So maybe something happens in Myanmar and has an impact on Europe. So that's what makes Eurasia as we love it, let's say. Yeah, so I would
Yes.
definitely glad to join some of your further sessions to discuss these matters. Thank you so much,
That
Sangar.
would
It
be
was a
lovely.
pleasure.
That would be lovely. Thank you for your time and patience, and thank you for all your insights. I am really pleased to have you as my guest, and I think that during the Termez Dialogue, I was sleep deprived for the whole week, and it was a very exhausting experience. But despite all of that, I remember your contributions during the expert meeting and other conversations that we had on the side with a lot of other people as well. So I think this was a very good experience in general for me, as someone who writes and talks about Afghanistan all the time. And this is why I think this focus on Eurasia, Central Asia, Afghanistan relations with Central Asia is something that we need to explore more. So thanks for being here. If people want to get in touch with you, learn about your work and your publications, how can they reach out to you?
Via LinkedIn or via email, Eldaniz.Gusseinov@gmail.com, or via LinkedIn. So I think this is the easiest way to get contacted with me.
Great. I will put links to your social media handles, your email, and your website in the description of this show. To our viewers and listeners, thank you very much for joining us in this episode. We will try to pick up the pace of making new shows. Again, sorry for our absence for a while. If you like to support our work, make sure to visit our Patreon page and PayPal page. And if you're not subscribed yet, subscribe to our YouTube channels. You can also place a review of our episodes on any podcasting platform where you listen to our shows. Until the next episode, take care of yourself and each other. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much.